Emma's worn leather shoes scuffed against the uneven pavement as she walked briskly through the busy streets of London. The small satchel on her shoulder held her carefully folded CV, and her heart pounded with a mix of fear, hope, and determination. She knew today could change everything for her and her struggling family, who depended on her more than ever. The faces of her family flashed in her mind, her mother's tired but loving eyes, her younger brother's innocent smile, her father's exhausted shoulders. Each memory fueled the weight of responsibility, but also ignited a quiet fire inside her. She couldn't give up. Finally, she reached the towering glass building in the heart of the city. Its mirrored surface reflected the bright London sky, and she felt a wave of awe and fear. The world inside seemed like a different universe, filled with sharply dressed professionals moving with purpose. Could someone like her, from a modest neighborhood, ever belong here? As she stepped inside, the cool air and the soft hum of computers hit her. The receptionist barely glanced up, tapping impatiently on her keyboard before giving Emma a curt, "Sit there and wait." Her stomach twisted, but she smiled politely and sat down, clutching her CV like a lifeline. Suddenly, a man appeared from behind the desk. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, with dark hair and piercing gray eyes that seemed to look right through her. He carried an aura of authority and confidence that made Emma feel small, yet strangely drawn to him. As she shifted, her satchel accidentally brushed against him. He turned sharply, and their eyes met. In that instant, a mixture of surprise, curiosity, and something unspoken passed between them. The bustling office around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in a moment charged with tension. The receptionist hurriedly apologized, explaining Emma's presence. But before Emma could retreat, the man's stern expression softened slightly. He gestured for her to follow him, his voice calm yet commanding. "Come with me. Let's see what you're made of." A jolt of hope and fear shot through her. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for her whole life. He led her through gleaming corridors, past glass-walled offices where employees worked diligently. The speed and focus of everyone made her both nervous and more determined to prove herself. Despite her humble background, finally, they arrived at a large, elegant office with a breathtaking view of London's skyline. Sunlight streamed in, glinting off polished surfaces. The man finally introduced himself. "I'm Oliver Bennett, CEO." His voice was calm but held an authority that made Emma's knees tremble. She straightened her posture, gripping her CV ready to show him the honesty and dedication that had carried her through every hardship. The questions began, ranging from ordinary to deeply personal. Emma answered with a mixture of nervousness and quiet strength, speaking about her struggles, her dreams, and her fierce determination. With each word, Oliver's stern expression softened almost imperceptibly. A small, rare smile flickered on his lips, a hint of admiration appearing in his gray eyes. There was something about her courage and sincerity that cut through his carefully constructed exterior. Outside, the city rumbled on, but inside the office, time seemed to stretch. Every glance, every word, every pause was charged with meaning. You could feel the electricity building as their two very different worlds collided, an unlikely connection forming in the silence. Emma started to notice small glimpses of Oliver's humanity, faint chuckle at a clever answer, a slight pause when she spoke of her family, a softening of his gaze. In those fleeting moments, she felt seen, not just as a poor girl looking for work, but as someone worthy of respect. Minutes felt like hours, each second layered with unspoken questions and heavy with anticipation. Emma poured her heart into every answer, and Oliver, though maintaining his professional demeanor, couldn't hide his growing fascination. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, fearless, kind, and unexpectedly wise. Just when Emma thought she had given all she could, Oliver leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. His piercing gray eyes locked onto hers, and he said, in a calm, intense voice, "I think we might have a place for you here, but not in the way you expect." The room was charged with suspense. Emma was stunned, her mind racing, her heart pounding. From this moment, her ordinary life was disrupted. Her journey into love, destiny, and an entirely new world had just begun. After Oliver's unexpected words, Emma's heart pounded like a drum. Disbelief, hope, and a nervous excitement swirled inside her. She'd come to this towering glass building with just a CV and a desperate wish for a simple job. Now, she stood before a man who seemed impossibly powerful, impossibly wealthy. Yet he had noticed her. She followed him back into his office, where sunlight poured through tall windows, glinting off polished surfaces and highlighting the sharp lines of the modern furniture. Emma felt like she had stepped into a world she'd only seen in magazines. Her hands gripped her satchel tighter as she tried to steady herself. This was no ordinary interview, but the warmth in Oliver's expression, the way his piercing gray eyes now held curiosity rather than judgment, made her feel, for the first time in months, that maybe she could belong here. He motioned toward a sleek leather chair. "Have a seat, Emma. Let's discuss something a little unconventional." She hesitated, her mind racing. What could he mean? Was this a test? A trick? She sat down carefully, hoping her nerves wouldn't betray her. She noticed small things about him she hadn't before, the way he adjusted his cufflinks, the faint scar above his eyebrow, the subtle scent of expensive cologne. Every detail seemed to draw her in. "We don't usually hire in this way," Oliver began, his tone calm but with an edge that made Emma lean forward. "Most of our employees go through rounds of interviews, but sometimes we notice something different in a person, something that doesn't show up on a CV, and you, Emma, have shown something unusual today. Determination, honesty, a sense of courage that not many people have." His words made her chest tighten with pride and disbelief. She'd spent her life being told to be realistic, to stay small. Yet here was a man who could seemingly bend the world to his will, telling her she was extraordinary. Emma swallowed hard, her voice trembling slightly. I just want to work hard, sir. I want to help my family. I want to prove I can do more than people expect of me." A faint smile crossed Oliver's face. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "You see, Emma," he said slowly, "most people come here looking for a job, a title, a salary. But I look for potential. I look for someone who can make a difference. And you carry something rare, something that can't be taught. And so, I've decided to give you a chance." Emma's mind spun. She'd expected a junior assistant position at best. But Oliver was offering something more, something undefined. It made her heart race with both anticipation and anxiety. A strange instinct told her to remain silent, to let him reveal his intentions in his own time. Over the next few days, Emma was thrust into a whirlwind of activities she could never have imagined. She was given a temporary role assisting Oliver, directly observing, learning, and contributing in ways that were often confusing, yet always challenging. She found herself organizing confidential files, preparing presentations she'd never heard of, and delivering messages between departments. Each task, no matter how small, was a lesson, and Emma absorbed every detail with an intensity that showed she knew this opportunity could vanish in an instant. The first day was exhausting. Her legs ached, her mind buzzed, but a strange exhilaration kept her going. Oliver was strict but fair. He corrected her politely when she made mistakes, never harshly. He occasionally offered brief compliments, "Good observation, Emma," or "Well done on that report," which made her smile quietly, feeling a sense of pride she'd rarely experienced. She noticed his quirks too, the way he rubbed his temple when stressed, the rare moments he laughed softly, his genuine interest in solutions, not just results. As days turned into weeks, they developed a subtle understanding, a rhythm that required few words. She started noticing when he was distracted, lost in thought, or staring out at the London skyline. One afternoon, she hesitated before placing a cup of coffee on his desk. He glanced up and smiled faintly. "Thanks, Emma. You didn't have to, but I appreciate it." That simple acknowledgement sent warmth through her chest. But life in the office wasn't easy. Whispers followed her in the halls. Employees were jealous of the attention she received from Oliver. She could feel the weight of their judgment. At first she felt intimidated, but Emma had grown used to adversity. She reminded herself of her own strength and refused to let office politics break her. She focused on her work, her demeanor calm and polite, proving she belonged through actions, not words. One day, an unexpected challenge arose. A crucial client was visiting, and Oliver, preoccupied with a pressing deal, had left Emma in charge of coordinating the presentation. Her hands shook as she reviewed everything, double-checking figures, aligning slides, making sure every detail was perfect. The weight of responsibility was immense, but she took a deep breath, remembered everything Oliver had taught her, and methodically completed the task. When Oliver returned, he glanced over her work, his expression unreadable. Then, with a rare, approving nod, he said, "Excellent. Emma, you've handled this better than I could have hoped." It was in these moments that Emma began to feel a deeper connection with him, not just as her employer, but as someone who believed in her. She saw glimpses of his humanity hidden behind the mask of power, and realized that beneath his strict exterior was a man who valued honesty and loyalty above all else. And though she tried to deny it, she could feel her heart stirring in ways that made her both nervous and exhilarated. What began as a simple story of a girl seeking a job was now transforming into a delicate dance of trust, admiration, and the beginnings of feelings neither of them fully understood. Every shared glance, every brief conversation, carried a new weight, building a suspense and emotional depth that was impossible to ignore. By the end of the week, Emma had not only proven herself capable, but had also earned a quiet place in Oliver's world, a place that was unexpected, challenging, and deeply transformative. She had begun to see herself differently, not as a struggling girl trying to survive, but as someone with potential, courage, and worth. And Oliver, in turn, had begun to see her as someone rare, someone who could challenge him, inspire him, and perhaps, in time, hold a place in his heart that he had never given to anyone before. Days turned into weeks, and Emma found herself adjusting to the fast-paced, hyper-sure world of Oliver Bennett's office in ways she never imagined. That initial nervousness had softened into a quiet determination, a rhythm of work and observation that allowed her to keep up with the demands of her role. Each morning, she arrived early, often before the city had fully woken. The chilly London air would brush against her face as she walked from the station to the towering glass building, her mind already rehearsing the tasks for the day. Inside, the office had become a strange mix of challenge and familiarity. She knew the corridors, the rhythm of the employees' movements, and the subtle signals that indicated when Oliver was about to be distracted or needed something urgent. She had learned to anticipate his needs, often completing small tasks before he even asked. Slowly, he began to rely on her in ways that surprised her. It was during one of those hectic mornings that she first noticed a subtle shift in their interactions. Oliver, usually so composed and formal, began to show glimpses of something softer. A rare smile when she corrected a minor error in a report, a nod of approval when she organized a particularly complicated meeting schedule, and the occasional quiet conversation over coffee in his office instead of the usual curt instructions. Emma could feel a new tension in the air, not the kind of pressure that made her anxious, but a delicate awareness that they were noticing each other in ways neither had expected. She worked carefully, yet found herself glancing at him during brief pauses, noticing the way his gray eyes reflected concentration, the way his jaw tightened when he thought deeply, and how he sometimes stared out of the large windows, as if searching for answers in the city below. Their connection grew gradually, almost imperceptibly. Emma learned to read the subtleties of his moods, adjusting her actions to support rather than hinder him. Oliver, in turn, began to observe her, not just for competence, but for the quiet strength she displayed in moments of stress. One afternoon, a particularly important client visit required her to coordinate several moving pieces at once. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she arranged documents and double-checked schedules. Oliver, who had been reviewing contracts, looked up at her efforts and gave a faint smile. "Good work, Emma. You handled that seamlessly." The words were simple, yet they carried a weight of recognition that went beyond professional achievement. As the weeks progressed, their collaboration deepened. Emma found herself entrusted with more significant responsibilities, preparing briefing notes for Oliver before critical meetings, summarizing complex reports, and sometimes even advising him on minor decisions. Each responsibility brought its own challenge, yet she thrived under the pressure. In turn, Oliver began to share more of his thoughts, not always work-related, but moments of reflection, glimpses of his life outside the office. He spoke occasionally about his childhood in a small town, the sacrifices he had made to build his company, and the loneliness he sometimes felt despite his wealth and influence. Emma listened quietly, offering small insights, gentle understanding, or just a silent presence that seemed to comfort him. There was a particular afternoon, with the sky over London heavy with clouds and the streets slick with rain, that Emma realized how much their connection had grown. She had prepared a set of reports, and Oliver was reviewing them at his desk. As she approached, she noticed him frown slightly at a figure in the spreadsheet. Instinctively, she leaned over to point out a correction. "I think this entry may have been duplicated," she said softly. He looked up, meeting her gaze, and for a long moment, he just studied her expression. Then, without a word, he nodded, a hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The silence that followed was comfortable, an unspoken acknowledgement of the trust between them. Emma found herself anticipating his reactions, understanding his preferences, and noticing when he needed support, even before he asked. She began to understand the man behind the title, the person who was more than a CEO, who had vulnerabilities and quiet moments of doubt. Similarly, Oliver began to see Emma beyond her role as an assistant. He observed her patience with difficult tasks, her calmness under pressure, and the subtle kindness she showed to others. The dynamic between them evolved naturally, a quiet intimacy forming in shared glances, brief conversations, and unspoken recognition. Despite this growing closeness, challenges continued to test their bond. Some employees remained wary of Emma, suspicious of the attention she received from Oliver. Rumors circulated, and subtle glances or whispered conversations sometimes followed her through the office. At first, she felt uncertain, wondering if she had overstepped her boundaries. But she continued to focus on her work, letting her competence and integrity speak for her. Oliver noticed these moments, offering support in subtle ways. A reassuring glance, a brief word of encouragement, or quietly defending her contributions in meetings without making it obvious. There were also moments of shared laughter that broke the office tension. Emma discovered Oliver's dry sense of humor, the way he occasionally teased colleagues with witty remarks, and how he could laugh softly when she responded cleverly. These small interactions brought warmth to their days, easing the stress of their responsibilities and creating a rhythm of companionship that neither had anticipated. Emma's admiration for him deepened, recognizing not only his intelligence and skill, but also the rare moments of vulnerability he displayed. A turning point came one evening when the office was unusually quiet. Emma had stayed late to finish some urgent reports, and Oliver was still reviewing documents. As she prepared to leave, he called her over. "Emma, wait," he said. She paused, then approached his desk. He gestured toward a file and asked for her input on a decision she had never been directly involved in before. Emma carefully reviewed the information and offered her observations. Oliver listened intently, nodding occasionally, then looked up. "You have a good eye," he said, his tone different, softer. "I'm glad you're here." The simple words resonated deeply, a quiet acknowledgement of her growing role and the trust between them. The days continued with their routine of work, challenges, and moments of shared understanding. Emma found herself looking forward to seeing Oliver each day, appreciating not just his mentorship but the subtle connection forming between them. Oliver, in turn, began to recognize the comfort and steadiness she brought into the office, a presence that was both grounding and stimulating. Despite the growing familiarity, neither acted hastily. The relationship was evolving naturally, built on respect, mutual understanding, and the gradual recognition of shared qualities. Emma became more confident, more aware of the impact she could have. Oliver, in turn, began to allow himself moments of reflection, recognizing emotions he had long kept buried. It was a period of subtle growth, learning, and quiet discovery. Emma navigated the challenges of a demanding environment while deepening her understanding of Oliver as a complex individual, and he, in turn, recognized qualities in her that inspired trust, admiration, and the beginnings of deeper feelings. Their interactions carried a delicate balance of professionalism and personal connection, a dynamic that grew richer with each passing day. And so, life in the office continued, a mix of pressure, responsibility, small victories, and fleeting moments of connection. Emma and Oliver moved through their days, slowly bridging the gap between their worlds. Each task completed, each problem solved, and each shared glance built the quiet intimacy that had begun to define their time together. As the city lights of London began to glow, reflecting off the glass buildings around them, both Emma and Oliver sensed that something in their lives had shifted, that their paths had intertwined in ways that would have lasting consequences. The weeks following Emma's growing closeness with Oliver had brought a strange rhythm into their days. Work flowed seamlessly. Small jokes and private glances punctuated the long hours, and a subtle understanding had formed between them. It was something neither had openly acknowledged, yet both could feel it in every gesture. Emma had grown more confident in her role, more assured in her abilities, and she found herself anticipating Oliver's needs even before he voiced them. It was a rhythm she had come to rely on, a quiet comfort amid the hyper-sure environment of the office. Yet beneath the surface of their growing trust, tension was quietly gathering. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Rumors whispered through the corridors, carried in hushed voices during coffee breaks and near the elevators. A few colleagues had noticed the attention Emma seemed to receive from Oliver. While some admired her dedication, others allowed envy to twist their observations into suspicion. "She's too close to him," one whispered to another. "Does she even belong here?" murmured a second, a hint of malice in their tone. Emma remained unaware at first, focused entirely on her responsibilities and the quiet satisfaction of completing each task correctly. But gradually, she began to notice subtle shifts, brief sidelong glances, small snickers as she passed, and the occasional tense silence when she entered a room. At first, Emma tried to ignore it. She reminded herself that she was in the office to work, to learn, and to prove herself, not to compete for social validation. But the atmosphere grew heavier with each passing day. Meetings that had previously run smoothly were now tinged with undercurrents of tension. A minor suggestion she made was questioned more aggressively than necessary, her competence challenged in ways that felt designed to intimidate her. It was confusing and unsettling, and for the first time since joining the office, Emma felt the familiar knot of insecurity tightening in her chest. Oliver noticed it, of course. His piercing gray eyes rarely missed a detail, and he observed the subtle changes in Emma's demeanor with quiet concern. One afternoon, he found her sitting at her desk, staring blankly at a spreadsheet, her shoulders tense. "Emma," he said gently, stepping closer. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, unsure whether to speak, but the weight of frustration she had been carrying spilled out. "It's the office," she admitted quietly. "Some people, they look at me differently now. I don't know if it's just me imagining things, or..." Her voice trailed off, and Oliver placed a reassuring hand on the edge of her desk. "Emma," he said, his tone firm but gentle, "don't let them get to you. You've earned your place here. Don't ever forget that, not for a second." His words were simple, but the strength behind them cut through the uncertainty, offering a lifeline she desperately needed. She nodded, grateful, yet a lingering unease remained. While Oliver's support was unwavering, the subtle opposition she faced from others added a pressure she could not entirely control. The situation escalated when a major client visit was scheduled, one that could make or break an important contract for the company. Emma had been tasked with preparing the presentation and ensuring every document was accurate. She worked tirelessly, checking and rechecking details. But when the client arrived, One of the colleagues who harbored jealousy toward her decided to undermine her subtly. A minor error in the spreadsheet, one that had been missed by everyone else, was exaggerated in front of the client, creating a tense moment in the otherwise polished presentation. Emma felt her stomach drop, panic rising, and her cheeks flushed as all eyes turned toward her. Oliver noticed immediately. He stepped in quietly, correcting the situation with calm authority, and handled the client's questions expertly. Yet after the meeting, he looked at Emma, his expression unreadable. She braced herself for criticism, expecting a harsh reprimand for allowing the disruption to occur. But instead, he said, "Emma, mistakes happen. What matters is how you handle them, and you did well under pressure." Relief and gratitude washed over her, but the incident also reminded her that the office was not entirely a safe space. She realized that even with Oliver's support, challenges would come from unforeseen directions, and some could be personal. The growing tension had a strange effect on Oliver as well. He had always been meticulous and guarded, but he began to feel a protective instinct that he had not anticipated. He noticed how quickly she adapted to pressure, how her calmness often diffused situations that could have escalated. He found himself thinking about her when she was not in the room, worrying subtly over her well-being and over the reactions of those who might wish her harm. It was a new sensation, unfamiliar and quietly unsettling, yet undeniably present. Their relationship, once strictly professional, began to shift in these moments of crisis and mutual understanding. Emma too started to notice these changes. She realized that Oliver's eyes lingered longer than necessary when she explained a complex task, that he would sometimes pause in conversation as if to better understand her thoughts. His rare moments of vulnerability were now being shared with her, moments that no one else in the office had ever witnessed. A careful, unspoken intimacy developed between them, built not on words alone but on shared experiences, quiet understanding, and a growing recognition of each other's character. Despite this closeness, Emma struggled with her feelings. She knew the professional boundaries in the office were delicate, and she feared misinterpreting Oliver's actions. Was his concern and attention purely professional, or was it something more? She found herself analyzing every interaction, replaying conversations in her mind, noticing subtle shifts in tone, pauses in speech, and glances that lingered too long to be purely incidental. The ambiguity was both thrilling and unsettling, leaving her heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and caution. The real turning point came one rainy afternoon, when London's gray skies mirrored the tension that had been building for weeks. Emma had stayed late to ensure an urgent project was completed, and Oliver was still in his office, reviewing contracts. As she approached to hand over the final reports, she noticed his brow furrowed in concentration, his jaw tense. "Emma," he called softly, "could you sit for a moment?" She obeyed, perching on the edge of a chair near his desk. For a long silence, he studied the documents, then looked up at her, his piercing gray eyes softer than she had ever seen. "I've been thinking," he began slowly, "about how you've handled everything over the past few weeks. The pressure, the challenges, the obstacles some people have tried to place in your way. And I need you to understand something." He paused, measuring his words. "You have impressed me, Emma, more than anyone I've seen in a long time. You're capable, intelligent, and resilient. And I trust you." Emma felt her chest tighten. Trust was rare in Oliver's world, a currency more valuable than any salary. She nodded quietly, unable to speak immediately, feeling a mix of pride, relief, and something more complicated stirring inside her. However, Oliver continued, leaning back slightly, "This path is not going to be easy. Not everyone here will accept your presence, and some will actively try to challenge you. You must remain steadfast, Emma, strong." And he hesitated for a moment, the first time she had seen him falter slightly. "You must believe in yourself as much as I do. Can you do that?" I will," Emma said softly, though firmly, her voice carrying a quiet determination that made him nod in approval. There was a long pause, filled with unspoken tension and mutual understanding, before Oliver returned his attention to the documents, leaving Emma to reflect on the weight of his words. In the following days, the atmosphere in the office remained charged. Emma faced quiet resistance from some colleagues, but she also discovered unexpected allies, employees who respected her diligence, her honesty, and the quiet strength she had shown. She navigated the delicate balance of asserting herself professionally while maintaining her composure, and Oliver continued to support her in small but meaningful ways. Their interactions became more nuanced. Emma learned to read Oliver's expressions and anticipate his reactions. She recognized when he was stressed or tired, and adjusted her approach. Similarly, Oliver began to notice the subtle cues in Emma's behavior, her quiet confidence, her thoughtful observations, and the way she handled pressure without losing her composure. A mutual respect and admiration deepened, forming the foundation for a relationship that had evolved far beyond employer and employee, though neither had named it yet. One evening, after the office had emptied, Emma lingered to organize some final files. Oliver remained at his desk, reviewing reports by the dim glow of his lamp. For a brief moment, the city lights outside reflected across the glass walls, painting a quiet, intimate scene of two people working side by side, aware of each other's presence yet giving space to the tasks at hand. The unspoken connection between them felt tangible, a subtle tension of shared understanding, admiration, and the beginnings of feelings that neither had fully acknowledged but both sensed deeply. As Emma packed her things to leave, Oliver called her over once more. "Emma," he said, his voice gentle, "thank you for today. Your work, it matters more than you realize." She nodded, understanding the weight of his words, and left the office with a quiet sense of purpose and a lingering awareness that their connection had grown stronger, more complex and far more significant than either of them had expected. The weeks after the office conflicts were a strange mix of tension, hard work, and a slow, budding understanding. I had proven myself, not just as capable, but as resilient. I learned to navigate the high expectations and the subtle pushback from those who doubted me. I learned to be assertive with a quiet confidence, to anticipate challenges, and to work with total precision. And through it all, my connection with Oliver Bennett grew steadily, subtly, and with a depth neither of us had really acknowledged. One morning, London woke up to a soft drizzle. Rain fell gently against the massive windows of our office building. As I walked towards the entrance, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and calm. The weather seemed to match my mood, gentle, but charged with possibility. Inside, the office was humming with its usual morning energy, but between Oliver and me, something else lingered. A quiet rhythm of mutual understanding had developed through countless shared moments of work, challenges, and unspoken companionship. Oliver noticed my arrival immediately. His sharp gray eyes softened when they met mine, and he gave a slight nod, a simple gesture that held more warmth than any words could. I nodded back, feeling that familiar flutter of awareness that went far beyond just being colleagues. Our small interactions, our glances, our careful smiles had become a private language, building a silent bridge between our two very different worlds. The day started with the usual whirlwind, meetings to prep, contracts to review, and client calls that demanded every ounce of my attention. I moved through each task with a newfound grace and efficiency. My confidence was growing with every assignment I completed. I could feel Oliver watching me. He noticed how my calmness under pressure not only steadied his team but also inspired trust in colleagues who were once skeptical. I saw a hint of pride in his eyes as he watched me handle challenges, a recognition that felt deeper than just professional respect. Then, an unexpected situation blew up. A key client arrived early, completely unannounced. It sent the staff scrambling, but I stepped forward instinctively. I coordinated the team, got the necessary documents ready, and made sure the meeting room was perfect. Oliver watched from a distance at first, his gaze following my every move. He saw my composure, my precision, and my intuitive grasp of the situation, and I could tell it impressed him. When he finally stepped in to assist, my prep work allowed him to focus entirely on the client, smoothing over discussions and closing critical points without any distractions. Later, after the client left, thrilled with the outcome, Oliver invited me into his office. The room was bathed in the soft afternoon light, feeling quiet and intimate. "Emma," he began, his voice calm but carrying weight. "I watched you handle everything today. You were exceptional." His words were deliberate, sincere, and they hit me with a force I didn't expect. I felt a rush of gratitude and nervous anticipation. "You've come a long way," he continued, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that was both steady and vulnerable. "When you first arrived, I wasn't sure what to expect, but you've shown courage, intelligence, and a resilience I rarely see. You've grown beyond any role I could have imagined for you." My heart tightened, hearing my hard work recognized in such a meaningful way, especially from him, a man of such influence and authority, was overwhelming. "Thank you, sir," I said softly, but my voice felt stronger than ever. He leaned back, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Emma, I want to be honest with you. These past weeks, working so closely, I've realized something important. You're not just an exceptional employer, a remarkable person. Your integrity, your determination, it matters to me. More than I expected." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. A warmth spread through my chest as the unspoken connection we shared finally started to feel real, undeniable. Days passed, and our bond deepened. I became an essential part of his professional world, but also a quiet presence in his personal one. He started confiding in me small details about his past, stories of childhood struggles, the immense burden of his responsibilities. I just listened, offering empathy and understanding. I began to see the man behind the CEO title, a man who had faced his own battles but remained grounded in values he rarely showed. Our unspoken relationship found a new equilibrium. I found myself thinking of him in quiet moments, replaying a small gesture, the sound of his voice. He, too, seemed to notice my absence, the quiet energy I brought to his day. One evening, the office was almost empty. Long shadows stretched across the floors from the few desk lamps still on. I was finishing up a report when Oliver, who was also still at his desk, called my name. "Emma," he said, his voice gentle. "Stay for a moment." I approached his desk and noticed a rare softness in his eyes, a vulnerability I'd never seen before. He motioned for me to sit. After a long silence, he finally looked up from his papers. "I've been thinking," he began slowly, "about how far you've come, and how important you've become. Not just to the office, but to me." His gaze held mine, unflinching. My chest tightened. "I never expected any of this," he continued, his voice quieter, more intimate. "I didn't expect to find someone who could challenge me, inspire me, and understand me in ways I hadn't anticipated. And yet, here you are." I was breathless. For weeks, I had sensed this growing feeling between us, but hearing him say it out loud was another thing entirely. I could only nod, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. He leaned forward. "Emma, I need to be honest. This connection between us, it matters to me. I respect you. I admire you, and I care for you, more than I've let myself admit." Finally, the unspoken was real. The truth of my own feelings rose up to meet his admiration, the respect, the affection I had held so quietly. "Oliver," I said softly, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. "I feel the same. I care for you, too." In that quiet moment, the office around us faded away. All the tension and unspoken barriers dissolved, replaced by a profound sense of clarity, trust, and the beginning of something new. In the days that followed, our dynamics shifted. We worked with the same professionalism, but now there was an added layer of intimacy. A reassuring glance during a stressful meeting, a quiet smile across the room, a brief touch on the shoulder. Each gesture was careful, respectful, and strengthened the bond between us. My confidence soared. I knew I was valued not just for my competence, but for who I was. I started taking on larger responsibilities, leading projects, and contributing to major company decisions. Oliver supported me, mentored me, but also gave me the space to shine on my own. It became a true partnership. The challenges didn't just disappear. Of course, jealousy and office politics were still there, but now, we faced them together. Our feelings, once a source of uncertainty, became a quiet source of strength, motivating us both. Months passed. I had grown from a nervous newcomer into a confident, integral part of his world, and he had allowed himself to be vulnerable, trusting me with pieces of himself he'd always guarded. Together, we were building something grounded in respect, admiration, and love. While the city of London bustled on around us, we had found a steady presence in each other, partnership of mind, heart, and spirit, promising a future shaped not just by success, but by a deep and fulfilling love. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. See you soon.